Spring 1941. North Atlantic. A convoy claws its way through a black, heaving ocean. 40 merchant ships, slow, heavy, carrying the lifeblood of a nation. Food, fuel, ammunition. And somewhere beneath them, invisible and patient, a predator waits. On the bridge of a British destroyer, the ASDIC operator leans over his headset. Contact. Bearing 090. Range 800 yards. The captain doesn't hesitate. Full speed ahead. The bow smashes through the swells. Spray lashes the bridge windows. The pings begin, sharp, metallic pulses echoing into the deep. 700 yards. 600. 5. The sound grows stronger. Closer. More urgent. 400. 300. And then, silence. The contact vanishes. Not because the submarine escaped. Not because it dove. But because the destroyer is too close. The physics of underwater acoustics have created a blind spot, a dead zone where the outgoing ping and the returning echo overlap into meaningless noise. For the next 90 seconds, the crew is firing blind. The captain shouts. The destroyer surges forward, racing over where the submarine should be. Depth charges roll from the stern. One after another. 20 seconds. 30. 40. At 200 feet, hydrostatic fuses trigger. The ocean erupts. Columns of white water punch into the sky. Shockwaves hammer the hull. Sailors brace against bulkheads. Then the sea settles. No oil. No debris. No wreckage. Beneath them, half a mile away, the submarine turns silently, lining up a torpedo shot at the convoy. This scene will repeat thousands of times across the Atlantic. The British fire. The submarines evade. The mathematics are merciless. For every German submarine sunk, escorts fire an average of 60 depth charge attacks. 60 attacks. 1 kill. The U-boats are winning. And in London, a Canadian chemist who once filled his friend's attic with explosions is about to do something the Royal Navy insists is impossible. His name is Charles Goodeve. He studies how the human eye sees color. And he is about to change the Battle of the Atlantic. The boy who blew things up. February 21, 1904. Neepawa, Manitoba. Charles Frederick Goodeve is born into modest means, the son of an Anglican clergyman with conviction but little income. There is no lineage of inventors behind him. No dynasty of engineers. His great-grandfather was a brewer. That's it. But Charles is different. While other children play, he disappears into the wilderness of Lake Winnipeg with only a canoe and a husky for company. Weeks at a time. Alone with questions. At 97, Chestnut Street, he and his friends convert an upstairs room into a laboratory. They mix chemicals. Heat beakers. Conduct experiments that generate vile smells and small explosions, according to one horrified mother. They nearly burn the house down. More than once. But Charles is learning something vital. Impossible things are often just untested things. At 15, he enters the University of Manitoba. He tries commerce. Hates it. Switches to chemistry and physics. Scrapes together tuition with summer jobs. Earns his degrees. In 1927, he wins a prestigious fellowship to study in London. His research focuses on photochemistry and the chemistry of vision, how the human eye perceives color. By 1940, he is elected Fellow of the Royal Society. A respected scientist. And then war erupts. The U-boat peril. September 3, 1939. Britain declares war on Germany. Soon, German U-boats begin tearing into Atlantic convoys. They hunt in coordinated wolf packs. They strike at night. They vanish by day. Britain is an island. It cannot feed itself. It cannot fuel itself. Everything must come by sea. If the U-boats cut the supply lines, Britain starves. Prime Minister Winston Churchill will later write that the only thing that truly frightened him during the war was the U-boat peril. Not the Blitz. Not invasion. The submarines. The Royal Navy fights back with destroyers equipped with ASDIC, what Americans call sonar. But ASDIC has a fatal flaw. When the escort closes within roughly 300 yards, the submarine vanishes from the sonar picture. The ship must pass directly over the target and drop depth charges behind it. This creates blind time. 90 seconds of invisibility. 90 seconds for a submarine to turn, dive, and escape. Depth charges sink slowly, 6 to 9 feet per second. If set for 300 feet, they may take nearly a minute to detonate. During that time, the submarine maneuvers. The escort guesses. And guesses wrong. Between 1939 and 1945, British escorts conduct over 5,000 depth charge attacks. They achieve roughly 85 confirmed kills. One success for every 60 attempts. The ocean is shaking with explosions. But the submarines survive. A simple, radical idea. Goodeve studies the numbers. 60 attacks per kill. That isn't bad luck. That's a broken system. He asks a question so simple it sounds foolish. What if we stop dropping weapons behind the ship? What if we fire them ahead? Attack while sonar contact is still solid. Strike where the submarine is, not where it used to be. The idea seems obvious in hindsight. At the time, it borders on heresy. To make it work, Goodeve proposes using a spigot mortar, an unconventional launcher repeatedly rejected by the British Ordnance Board. He's warned bluntly. The idea was rejected in 1910. Rejected again in 1930. Rejected again in 1939. If God Almighty himself proposed it, one officer says, it would still be turned down. Goodeve doesn't care. He begins development anyway within the Department of Miscellaneous Weapons Development, nicknamed the Wheezers and Dodgers. The weapon will fire 24 small projectiles in a circular pattern ahead of the ship. Each projectile carries a contact fuse. If it hits a submarine, it explodes. If it misses, it sinks silently. No explosion means no sonar disruption. The ship can fire again immediately. No blind time. No guessing. They name it Hedgehog. Crashing Churchill's lunch. By 1941, prototypes work. But the Royal Navy refuses mass production. Too unconventional. Too risky. Too disruptive. Goodeve is running out of options. So he decides to do something extraordinary. He crashes a weapons demonstration attended by Winston Churchill. Uninvited. Unapproved. He sets up the Hedgehog launcher at the edge of the firing range. Churchill is tired. Hungry. Irritated. I haven't time, he says. I want my lunch. Goodeve persists. The launcher fires. 24 projectiles arc into the sky in a graceful ripple, landing in a tight ellipse exactly as predicted. Churchill watches. Asks for another demonstration. Then another. The next morning, production is authorized. Because one scientist refused to accept no. The Atlantic turns. By 1943, Hedgehog is deployed widely. The difference is immediate. A destroyer detects a submarine at 800 yards. Range closes. 500. 400. 300. Instead of losing contact and firing blind, the Hedgehog launches at full sonar lock. 24 projectiles splash down ahead. Silence means miss. Explosion means hit. If it misses, fire again immediately. The mathematics shift dramatically. Instead of 60 attacks per kill, Hedgehog averages roughly 1 kill per 5 or 6 attacks. 10 times more effective. Some crews hesitate at first. They miss the thunder of depth charges. Hedgehog attacks that miss are quiet. Unnervingly quiet. But the results speak for themselves. No submarine survives a direct Hedgehog hit. The ship that proved it. May 1944. Pacific Theater. An American destroyer escort named USS England, DE 635, begins hunting Japanese submarines. In 12 days, she sinks 6 submarines. A record unmatched in naval history. Each kill achieved with Hedgehog. Admiral Ernest King sends a message that echoes through naval lore. There will always be an England in the United States Navy. Japan's submarine early warning line collapses. American forces achieve surprise in the Mariana Islands. A weapon once dismissed as impossible has changed the strategic balance of an ocean. The legacy. After the war, Charles Goodeve is knighted. He returns to science. But his legacy is written not in laboratories, but in survival statistics. From 60 attacks per kill to 5. From blind guessing to precise engagement. From desperation to dominance. The Hedgehog spawned successors, Squid, Limbo, Azrock. Modern anti-submarine warfare traces its lineage to that stubborn Canadian chemist. But perhaps his greatest achievement wasn't technical. It was procedural. When experts said impossible, he asked, "Is it physics? Or is it habit?" When institutions said no, he asked, "Is it wrong? Or is it unfamiliar?" He didn't have more authority. He didn't have more resources. He had better math. And the refusal to accept that tradition was stronger than evidence. Spring 1941. North Atlantic. A destroyer closes in. 700 yards. 600. 5. 400. 300. This time, the contact does not vanish into blind time. The Hedgehog fires. Moments later, a dull underwater thud. Then another. Oil spreads across the surface. The convoy steams on. Because somewhere in London, a chemist who once blew up his friend's attic refused to believe that 60 failures for every success was acceptable. They said it was impossible. He built it anyway.